welcome to part 2 of our fabulous morning show. We got some heavy topics in this one. The numbers for inflation have just been released, and oh boy, it ain't pretty.
No.
Not to mention, there's a lot of talk, aside from prostitute bean soup, there's a lot of talk of ghost guns. Thought we'd touch a little bit on those. Got a couple of nice articles. And then finally, there's oh boy. Just, man, like a bad case of herpes. Fauci is back, and as with him come potential for lockdowns. We didn't think we'd have to talk about it again, but unfortunately we do. So, welcome to part 2 of
Well, of course, the new study showing how red states fared versus blue states.
Yes, we're definitely going to show exactly who won round 1 of the lockdowns before we start playing this game again.
Yes, before we make our decisions on what we will or will not assess as our own risk.
Exactly. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and hop right into it here from the Daily Mail. Oh boy, America goes back to the 80s. Surging gas prices and higher rents push inflation to 41-year high of 8.5% as the White House blames, you guessed it, Putin invading Ukraine.
Yes, because that's what we know happened.
Exactly. The Consumer Price Index rose 8.5% in March from a year ago. When did he invade Ukraine? Was that like last month or the month before?
February, yep.
February.
2 months ago.
So anyways, from a year ago, the fastest increase since December of 1981, housing costs, which make up about a third of the index, have escalated and show no signs of cooling. Gas prices soared 49% in March from a year ago as the war in Ukraine rocked energy markets. Yeah, sure. Just the war, eh?
Yeah.
Biden's administration tried to get ahead of the dire inflation news by blaming Russian leader Vladimir Putin, but Republicans placed the blame for soaring prices on Democrats' reckless spending and failed policies. 100% agree. And the fact that they're coming out and saying 8.5%, like we mentioned during the end of the last video, I didn't listen, but read about how Psaki had said that the numbers coming out were much worse than they were talking about, and basically trying to get ahead of what was about to be announced. And even the 8.5%, I don't truly believe. I mean, I have seen much higher numbers from behind the scenes, but at the same time, this is the official one. And if it's this bad when it's the official message, oh boy, are we in for a wild ride over the next couple of years, huh?
Well, and here's the thing is Biden was handed a functioning economy.
Yep.
It had been hit by COVID. It had been shut down.
COVID, yes, but 2019, no one can deny was amazing.
Yes.
Yep, so the potential was there. Absolutely.
So the potential was there to simply open things back up as we found out more and how things developed and allow that to fuel itself. You know, because it essentially created a false recession.
Yeah.
But instead of doing that and encouraging people to come out and to restart and rebuild and continue growth, we turned it into the government will cut you another check to stay home.
Yeah, about that. So they printed, $8 trillion worth of money. They gave you $1,400, and then they shipped the rest over to their cronies across the seas.
Yeah.
That's why, that's why I say it feels like we're slowly turning into Gotham City as a country being run by essentially an aged, senile mafia don and all of his little stooges trying their hardest to screw us as hard as possible on their way out. I have a little chart here from that same article to show you directly how inflation has impacted each particular category from March of last year to March of this year. Meat and poultry up 14%, cereal up 9.2%, or as we have seen, the price may not increase, but the size changes. Make sure you're paying attention to the size and the price. Gasoline, of course, 49%. Airfares, 15%. 49%. Used cars. This one's crazy. 35%. Used car market is like through the roof.
Yeah.
And then fruit and veggies, 8.5%. Of course, this is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, all that good jazz. But it's hitting us. It's hitting everywhere across the board. I mean, we've warned you. Well, I'm not going to say we've warned you, but we've definitely talked about how this is coming and how by the way they have it set up by the end of the summer, because of the impact of the fertilizer, because of the impact of the supply chains, everything like that, we're going to be seeing mass chaos. So I'm not saying this is not advice, but me personally, I have begun prepping because, of course, the worst case scenario is you have food. You can eat the food. If you prep properly, it's stored to last. And so even if, and I honestly hope we are proven wrong. I hope things rebound and everything goes back good, because believe it or not, we do not want this to happen.
Well, and we're not looking forward to shortages, but we see them.
Yes, and it's important to see what's coming, to look to the horizon and see it. I mean, the best thing you can do is prepare. And like I said, the worst case scenario for us in preparing is we get to be wrong.
Yes.
And we just have extra food, so our grocery bills are a little bit lighter for a couple weeks.
Exactly. We have more people over to enjoy big parties together, but that type of thing. But yeah, it's really scary to think that, gas has seen a 49% jump in just a year.
I mean, the fact just go back to 2019 where we were seeing gas, let's say, I believe the national average was $2.30, but where we lived, I think it got down to like $1.89. Wasn't that the lowest we saw? We saw a 1 in front at some point.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that gasoline going up 49% it has that trickle-down effect. Yep. That it's going to only increase the cost of other goods.
Oh, of course.
So the increases that we've seen so far are not going to stop as long as that gasoline price keeps going up.
Unless you buy an electric vehicle.
Yes, because that would solve everything.
That's what their response is. Just buy an electric vehicle.
If we could just make the truckers work harder, I guess.
Exactly. Let's destroy their supply chains and then blame them for it.
Yeah. No, and that's the really hard part, is that a lot of people are like, oh, well, tighten your belt and don't drive if you don't have to.
Yeah, those are the same people who think that food comes from the grocery store.
Yes.
Yes, honestly.
The milk just appears there.
The milk just appears there. The fairies bring it in the night.
Well, and there are also people who don't pay attention to what they don't specialize in.
Exactly. I mean, if you're living in any kind of rural area, you're going to feel it, and it's going to hurt. But in my honest opinion, it's going to be a very painful pinch. If you're living in the cities for this, oh, brother, you are in for a rough time. And that is what scares me the most, is the people who are in these dense cities, these liberal urban types. They don't know what's coming.
And the thing is, our economy is built to swing back and forth like that.
Oh, of course.
We obviously don't need to be pushing it to the point of breaking.
No.
But I, for one, I've always believed in buying local, staying local, anything that you can make or fix yourself.
Yes, and when we say buying local, we mean like literally buying like from farmers markets and things. I don't know why it became a trend to put organic on food. Shouldn't it all be organic? Now, I see what they're going for, but it really just shows how far separated they are from real food. Like, if you were to buy something like a tomato fresh from a farmer versus buying a packaged one in the store, you're going to notice a world of difference.
Well, there's a huge difference in the flavor of, like, when I introduced you to buying meat from a butcher.
Oh my God, my mind is blown.
Versus the Walmart
meat. I mean, my father-in-law made us a hamburger over a campfire from a local butcher. That was honestly the best, juiciest burger I've ever had.
Without adding a bunch of seasonings and stuff to it.
He literally was just like, bloop, bloop, on the fire. I even said, should we have brought seasoning? And he just goes, nah.
Well, I mean, there's a reason that before COVID and all that hit, do you remember when farmers markets in large cities really started to take off?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Raleigh was a huge one for that.
Yep.
And they had a lot of farm-to-table restaurants that came up. And like down in Kalamazoo, Food Dance.
Yep.
So we're talking, a decade ago. People started to realize that they didn't have to buy into the garbage that needed to be shipped.
There's a really weird picture, and I think it was Jack Posobiec who tweeted it, and this was, I think, a month or two ago, where it showed a picture it was a poolside picture in the 60s, and, like, literally there's not a fat person in the frame. Like, everybody is ripped, everybody has six-packs, everybody looks fabulous, even though they're all clearly of different ages lounging by the pool. And the caption he put on it was, "Life before processed food."
Oh.
And I saw that, and I'm like, wow, that explains a lot when I think about just the sheer difference I've experienced between buying at a store in a city versus buying at a butcher from the farmer.
Or even, I mean, when we go to Dad's house and Gabe pulls carrots.
Yeah,
and beets right out of the
fresh fruits
garden.
And vegetables are amazing, and as the weather improves, as you guys know, we talk about it. We're going to be doing a show called Hometown Homesteaders, and just show you how to make these gardens and really reap the benefits of your hard work. It is very satisfying. Not only is the difference in flavor and, of course, the price difference of growing your own food, but the satisfaction of eating it. It's amazing.
I love that there's more, and I'm really hoping that with the inflation going up and with the gas prices and stuff going up, we'll start to see a swing back towards that, and more farmers markets opening. I know our small town has one. I know when we were down in North Carolina, a lot of the smaller towns had them. They started to die off in popularity, as things were easily mass produced and a lot cheaper.
You can find them, but it's not like they're advertised or anything. Most of the time, we find out about these things because someone mentions it, or we hear it in passing. Or I think at one point, did we see a flyer? No, it was in Clayton. We saw a sign that said Clayton Farmers Market and had an arrow.
Yes.
And we were like, we got to find out more about that.
Yep. And a lot of that, I think the local politicians should lean more on that. Get more involved with those communities that are closer to them and the people who are coming out and support those type of programs. I think it was a huge benefit to the government when they started saying, okay, well, people with EBT cards can now get... what was the policy? It was they get like double the amount if their EBT card is accepted at a place like a farmer's market.
Yes, I believe you're correct.
Because I think Raleigh did that
if they
at their
local,
farmer's market.
Then they could get it a double price or double spending budget.
Yeah, but people have to look into those programs. They're not very well known programs.
No.
But what a great way to be healthier. Yeah. To get rid of that dependency on mass production.
Oh, absolutely.
And the processes. So, and also help bring down the inflation costs, because if there's not a demand to bring things across the globe, and we can produce and be self-sufficient here, that's when we can help out other places.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are going to have that rude awakening of having to tighten their belts and figure out, like, well, how can I make this budget work now that it's not worth the same amount it was yesterday?
Yep.
And the little things that you start doing, especially if you start now, that's the biggest thing, is starting ASAP. Like, the sun's finally coming out here, so we finally have the opportunity to get things going. But where you are, if it is if it's nice, if it's good farming weather, or even if it's just warm, and mildly sunny, that's all you need, and you can start growing this stuff. But anyways, wow, I have to reel this one way back to this article in which we were talking about inflation. So I'm going to continue here.
Yep.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said during Monday's briefing that the White House expected, quote, headline inflation to be extraordinarily elevated due to Putin's price hike. Yes. Inflation has become a top political threat to Biden and congressional Democrats. Get rid of them all. Get rid of all the uniparty. It doesn't mean Democrats or Republicans. You know who I'm talking about. We have to cleanse this system, and we have to start there. Anywho,
I think people on the conservative side of this would be more willing to buy into it, or at least to be open-minded about it, if they stopped calling it Putin's price hike.
Well, of course.
And made it more nationalistic, like, we're doing this because we're the good guys, but they're not doing that.
No.
They're turning it into there's a big bad.
Yes, they're trying so hard to rally support for what Russia's doing and to rally support for Ukraine and all this nonsense. And unfortunately, the distractions haven't worked. People have said, why should I care about what's going on over there when we have all these problems here affecting me and my family? Like, why is the value of my money less important than what's going on in Ukraine?
Yes. So as they've pivoted, then the Biden administration has now come out with, we're going to blame for the inflation.
Of course.
But they finally, yesterday, started talking about other issues, other policies that they want to move forward with.
Oh, boy.
Now that we're done with the Supreme Court justice nomination, now that we're done with a couple of other things, we're going to pigeonhole Russia for now. And then we're going to move on to attacking ghost guns.
Oh, boy, yeah, ghost guns. Ghost guns are an interesting one. Now, these articles, Miss Monica brought these to my attention, and they may be a little surprising here. First up is, the most reliable name in news, CNN. what you should know about ghost guns as Biden announces new regulation. Now, you actually told me, and this was quite surprising for me to hear, that this, of the two sources you sent me, was the more reliable of the two. So why don't I let you take this one?
So the way that it's presented leans more to the idea, or at least from the way that I took it, leans more to the idea that why exactly are we making this a top priority when there are so many other issues? So if you scroll down, the article says, let me go back up for a second. President Joe Biden on Monday announced new steps aimed at regulating so-called ghost guns as use of the untraceable homemade weapons in violent crimes rises. So ghost guns are one of the many issues facing regulators and policymakers looking to address a spike in gun violence that began in early summer 2020. Gun homicides drove the uptick. Here's what you should know about ghost guns.
So before we go into what ghost guns are, just stop at the fact that they say they are untraceable. But more importantly, like you said, 2020, this is typical, like, Democrat mindset of how things happen in cities, how those things come to be. That policy should be dictated to all.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to ban every kind of gun in Chicago. I'm sure that's doing great things for the crime rate there. But you know what? We're going to ban it all statewide. Completely insane. And this is just their latest boogeyman. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, so then it goes on to ghost guns are untraceable, self-assembled firearms, often put together with parts sold online, sometimes in as little as 30 minutes. Okay. The weapons sometimes referred to by officials as privately made firearms, or PMFs, do not have serial numbers, making them all the more difficult to track and regulate. Purchasing kits to build ghost guns online does not require a background check, so buyers can sidestep the typical requirements that might come with buying a firearm.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
This means that anyone, no matter their age or criminal record, can buy the kits and assemble a weapon. So,
just as the founding fathers intended.
Well, and here's the thing about that. That's not true.
What? Wait a minute. Hold the phone. Are you trying to tell me CNN is not the most reliable source?
Both of these articles, it is true that you can purchase firearm kits online.
Yep.
However, there is a background check required for, I can't remember what part of the gun it is.
That's fine.
But there's a specific part of the gun.
I imagine it's an important part of the gun.
If completely assembled when being purchased, has to be, you have to have a background check.
Yeah.
You can buy parts to this and assemble it yourself, but it requires special equipment, potentially a 3D printer. So we're not talking something that is very prevalent.
Now, you notice that they didn't say anything about, like, the level of expertise required to do these.
Yes. And Biden even said in his address, anyone with a hand drill at home can put these together.
Oh, of course. It's all just nonsense. It's all just a new boogeyman. We know Democrats hate guns. Well, except for when they have them.
Here's their argument is that they're becoming more prevalent. Okay? Mm-hmm. Well, so the change in this, and if you scroll down, it says ghost guns make up increasing share of gun recoveries.
Bring that up here.
And there's a chart at the bottom.
Yep.
Look at the percentages there. So in 2019, guns seized in Baltimore, 2,173 guns. Mm-hmm. Only 30 of those were ghost guns.
It's obviously a national crisis.
Yes.
I like how it's Baltimore and San Francisco.
Yes. See, that's another thing.
The Democrats are gun grabbers. They have been for years.
And these are areas that are highly regulated.
Yes, they have so many laws.
So, of course, people are looking for ways around purchasing them.
Yep.
And I believe it was...
I wouldn't say looking around ways around purchasing them, but being tracked. The traceability.
Yes.
Because that is one of the allures of the ghost gun is you build it and it can't be traced.
So they're not looking to address any part of the guns that were seized that were illegally obtained.
Illegally obtained because, yes, criminals just love following laws.
Yes, because out of the 2,703 in 2019, 30 of them were ghost guns. So they're focused on that 30. because now 2 years later it's 352. Okay, there's a drastic increase there, but do you think maybe the other 2,000 guns, we should be addressing that part of this? Nah. Nah. So between 2016 and 2021, the ATF received 45,000 reports of privately made firearms recovered by law enforcement in criminal investigations, including 2,000 reported last year alone. Oh, sorry, 20,000.
20,000. Ooh.
The agency was able to trace only 1% of the 45,000, officials said, because the firearms lack serial numbers. Okay.
Do you know how many guns there are in this country? Just gonna throw that out there. Do you know how many guns there are in this country?
So there was another report, and I have to find it for you, and I can't remember if it's in the next article or not. But it talks about how, in a specific study, there were 2,400 ghost gun crimes. I believe it was across the United States last year. 2,400 total.
330 million in this country.
2,200 of those crimes, specifically relating to ghost guns, were just the possession, sale, or manufacturing of ghost guns.
So they weren't actually using them.
They weren't actually used for anything.
They just went after them for making them.
Yes.
Hey, oy.
So, okay, I see that there's a rising issue there, but you're talking about a fringe
Oh, of course.
fraction of criminal, and Biden presents it as
Well, of course.
it's the weapon of choice, were his specific words.
The pathetic gun control straw man that they've been using pretty much for as long as I can remember. It never gets old. It's always some new boogeyman to stop. We have to go after this or that. We have to go after semi-automatic rifles.
Yeah.
What? And then they try to say everybody's got an automatic gun. Like, nobody has an automatic gun.
Yes, and the bigger part is that they're going after the weapon used in the crime instead of the person committing the crime.
The founding fathers, that's the worst part, is when they won't publish crime statistics out of fear of being labeled anything. It doesn't matter one way or the other. They won't. Now they're refusing to release mugshots for the same reason, and they're trying to say the gun caused the problem.
Yes. The gun caused the problem. It has
cup
nothing
is as
to do.
threatening as a gun.
Yes.
If I wanted to, I
In
could
the right hands,
smash
yes.
someone's head in with this gun, just like a gun. A bullet shot from a gun could do it. Are they going to regulate this? Probably.
Well, and then you're talking about, okay, so we have to be regulated on every single thing because a fringe minority of people are bad people.
Oh my God! You literally just described like the woke movement, the this, the that. A fringe minority of people are, for whatever reason, given attention, and therefore it applies to everyone. It's a blanket statement from then on.
Well, and they're repeating the same rhetoric. So, like the CBS News article that I sent you.
Hold up, hopping over. Okay, go ahead. I'll bring it up now.
The Biden administration unveiled new regulations for ghost guns Monday on a move that advocates say will help reduce gun violence. The new rules will help law enforcement track and trace these firearms, which authorities say are increasingly involved in crimes.
If they're so good at tracking and tracing guns, then why are there any gun crimes whatsoever?
Exactly.
I mean, it's nonsense. It's virtue signaling, and like I said, it's just another straw man to attack.
Well, because the guns that are being used in crimes are not guns obtained legally.
Are you sure? Are you saying criminals don't follow the law? Because surely all these laws they put into place didn't just punish people who genuinely want to go through the steps to own a firearm.
This is going back to this is kind of what the liberal side does with everything.
Nonstop.
Well, let's get to the root cause. Let's not visit the border. Let's get to the root cause. And I'm going to go to Brazil to talk to them about the southern border.
Did you know, prior to the invention of the gun, the world was crime-free, murder-free. It was peace, but then the gun came.
Cain and Abel.
Actually, I should say,
story.
all of that changed when the gun nation attacked.
That's exactly what this has turned into.
They're insane. They've always been insane. They'll always be insane. The founding fathers knew what they were doing. Well-armed populace.
Let me take away the rights of the individual and turn it over to the higher power.
The state. It's all about communism. They know they cannot institutionalize something so crazy against an armed populace because sooner or later, and again, I don't want this to happen, but sooner or later they're going to push so hard that those gun barrels are going to turn towards them and say, back off.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they want that to happen because they keep pushing. It's like we talked about the other day. They keep doing that thing where they're like, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. And as a sibling, you know you can't do anything because the parents will be on the kid's side because technically he's just annoying you and you're going to ignore him. But oh boy, the second that finger finally gets too close and touches, oh boy.
Well, because it comes down to they're trying to force through policies on a federal level that different areas don't believe the same thing.
Exactly. It's a sweeping generalization that they feel that people who, like someone who is dwelling in New York complaining about gun violence has nothing to do with some farmer who's has his gun and is shooting off foxes or something.
Yes.
Bears are a thing, and it doesn't even matter. The excuses don't matter.
It needs to stop being a federal issue.
Yes, thank you.
And and let's face it, the feds aren't going to prosecute these individual cases.
No.
Nobody's scared of the Fed coming after them for a ghost gun. They should be scared of their local authorities. Yeah. But the local authorities are like, well, no, this is the culture, this is the change. So it comes down to the fact that we're putting in regulations that are not effective.
Of course.
And we're doing it to signal that we're in charge and skewing the numbers and making it sound like these guns are bought and sold every day by so many people.
Of course. I mean, that's all they are is used. Just nonstop. I mean, you literally, you make it, you conjure it out of thin air with a drill, and suddenly you're just going on mass shooting.
Yes. Yep.
Because that's how it works in their mind, even though all they have to do is look at the results from their own cities and their own failed laws to see they don't understand the issue, and they never have.
Yeah.
It's pathetic that is always what they go back to. Oh, come on, man, we need more gun control and prostitute bean soup. Come on, man. It's just, it's sickening that they just keep going back to it. Well, you know, he's got things on his mind. I'm a prostitute bean soup. Come on, man.
Well, and I mean, he's got to go after something. His approval numbers are tanking.
In the gutter.
They're in the gutter. I mean, Russia wasn't working.
Russia's not working.
What else do we have?
I mean, nothing is diverting attention from the failure that is the administration. And with midterms coming up, they are like, and it's a little scary, but they are getting to desperate levels of get the attention off of us. We're not to blame. We're not to blame because, as you've seen from every poll across the board, public sentiment is not on their side.
Well, and it's because all of these very blue cities have been carrying them.
Oh, yes.
But as the pandemic shifts people out into more rural areas, they're going to start to see the influence of people getting away from the city and starting to vote red.
Exactly. The demographics are changing. I actually saw a report out of Pennsylvania, and this has got to be terrifying for them, but they always track party switching and try to use it to boost one thing or the other. And we have never had a situation like what's happening right now in Pennsylvania. Democrats switching to Republican are doing it at 4 times the rate of Republicans switching to Democrats. Like, they're just done.
Well, and it's the big part is leading into the next article.
The big part is the COOF. Because unfortunately, despite everything they say, New York, but I mean, we could go into the states and we will in a moment. They did it wrong, whereas Florida, South Dakota, Texas, I mean, Florida especially is the shining beacon of they did it right. It is provable at this point. However, from, the post-millennial, proof, I say, blue states failed in COVID response. Red states did the best. This is according to a study. We're going to look at this in a moment. The reason we bring this up is, like I mentioned before, like a bad case of herpes, Fauci has crawled back out and started warning people again about the possibility of lockdowns. And I believe it was it Philadelphia?
Yes. And
Philadelphia has reinstituted a indoor mask.
Yeah. Yep. But the last thing that I saw from Fauci was people need to make their own risk assessments.
Oh, they didn't like
regards to COVID.
Yeah. They basically said you got to live with it. It's the new flu. So do your thing. We're not going to mandate it anymore. Then how do the Democrats respond? Oh, bring back mandates.
Well, and they're doing this, and they're trying to do it as all of the news of what's happening over in China is coming out.
Oh, dude, we're not going to talk about that, but it is not only creepy, it is sick.
Yes, some very messed up stuff.
Very disturbing imagery of what they're doing to their citizens over there, and I'm not talking about the Surprisingly enough, I'm not talking about the concentration camps. I'm talking about their CCP-approved citizens. And we're not going to go into it too much.
No.
If you want to look into the clips, you can. But when I say they are haunting, I don't mean in like a gore kind of way, just a human nature kind of way. They are haunting. So if you want to, that is on you, my friend.
No, but looking at the Post Millennials article, new study.
So, a new study ranks all U.S. states in their handling of the COVID pandemic from best to worst. Florida came out among the top states, while the states of New York and New Jersey were at the bottom. Interesting. So, shutting down their economies and schools was by far the biggest mistake governors and state officials made during COVID, particularly in blue states, commented Stephen Moore of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity, the organization that performed the study. The study further revealed that, on average, unemployment was 2 full points higher in states that engaged in, quote, severe lockdowns.
Well, really? You're going to tell people they can't go to work and then not expect them to collect unemployment? I mean,
yeah. And, of course, you got to love how Biden, they literally fire all these people. And then when they start getting new jobs, Biden tries to tout it as, look at all these new jobs I created. Look at all this growth. Come on, man. Prostitute being soup.
Yes. When you're like, okay, but the amount of people who were working before the pandemic have not come back.
No, these aren't new jobs created.
And it is not like we needed this study to show us, because when you're in areas, when you're going through the drive-through and you're like, oh my gosh, there's 2 people working here and a bunch of people. Yes. Oh my gosh, the labor shortage is real. And it's become one of those things where the more you locked people down and the more that you shut them away and said, here's a system where you can live and imagine what you want when you get out of it, versus, okay, we did this for a health crisis, now we need everybody to get back to work. He's changed the game and taken the power away from the employers.
I was going to say, the one thing that Fauci and all the Democrats can do better than anyone else is move the goalposts. That's what constantly happens. It's about this, it's about that, it's about that, it's about immunity. It's not about immunity. I mean, they constantly have to keep changing it. Interestingly enough, from the article here, I've gotten down to the actual chart. It says, in reference to... Okay, in fact, New Jersey ranked dead last out of all states in 50th place, with New York next in line in 49th. Illinois, Washington, D.C., and the state of California also fared very poorly in the rankings. Quote, they had high age-adjusted death rates, they had high unemployment and significant GDP losses, and they kept their schools shut down much longer than almost all other states. Stated the commentary to the study. It says 9 out of the top 10 COVID responses were from red states. So let's look at this chart here, and let me see if I can make this big enough to somewhat read on the screen. That's probably about as good as it's going to get. So number 1. What? Really? Utah?
No. Look at the end rank.
Oh, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Right?
Okay, what's the first rank?
Oh, no, you're right. The first one is
but they said Florida finished first. So what's the rank at the end? Let me look at the caption here. Oh, there's no caption. Well, let's look at it. I suppose it is Utah. All right, then. That's fine. So Utah, Nebraska, Vermont. I mean, you can just look at the numbers here about their combined scores. And they
okay, so I see what it is. It's the average between the different rankings.
Okay.
So for in-person schooling percentage, where they ranked on that, for mortality and morbidity cases, where they ranked on that, as well as the economic growth and the GDP adjustments.
I see what you mean. It's just
so then they averaged the cost. So Utah is the top.
Go Utah! Yeah, you look down, just Nebraska, Vermont, Montana, South Dakota. The funny thing about all of these states leading up to Florida, those top 5 states, those are pretty much central of the country, quote-unquote, flyover states that you know that these city-urban liberal types aren't big on, from what we've seen. They call it flyover country, cow country, whatever, and yet, look at that. The top 5... they handled it better than anyone else. I mean,
well, in the ones that are, I would say, still flyover states like Illinois.
Okay, fair enough. But Illinois is
the ones that are like that are, on the lower ranking, have a major metropolitan area that is considered more progressive.
Yes.
So even if the rest of the state would be conservative, Chicago is a huge detriment to that state.
Of course.
Because they're leading from a place of we're a giant city, and a lot of Illinois is not.
No, and they're really pushing it. I mean, you'd be surprised. Illinois is surprisingly red outside of the city, just like so many other places.
Well, look at Michigan. We're rated 40th. And
jeez, I haven't even found us. Yep, there we are.
We are 1.27. For the majority of the state, the population density isn't as big. And that's the problem, is that we're leading from a place of power where the population is huge.
Embarrassing.
And they're making decisions based on where they're at.
Dang.
Instead of keeping it more local as far as the policies that we're allowed to instate.
Look at these numbers. They are pathetic. And yeah, they're all, I mean, oh boy. So if anything, this kind of information would make you really wonder, like, what are your leaders' intentions? Are they taking you into account? Because if Fauci is really out there talking about, or I guess I should say the cult of Fauci, even if they've ousted their leader, if they're really talking about bringing back lockdowns like we've seen in Pennsylvania. Oh, wait, hold on. Where is Pennsylvania? Ooh, do. Let me look from the bottom up. Oh, there you are, 42. At least they were, I mean, they're worse than Michigan, so I guess we got that going for us. But yeah, when you do something like that, when your immediate response is to lock down your populace, I'm not surprised that you're 42nd out of the whole list with a negative 1.45 total score.
Yes.
Now, granted, you know, we don't want to get too conspiratorial with why they do this. All we can really agree on, and this is the honest truth, I mean, certain leaders love grabbing power.
Yes.
Emergency powers are something that they just revel, and
but it's funny because the American people statistically don't like being told what to do.
No. Yeah, the last one who told us what to do was England. How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, they're dealing with Boris and some of his shenanigans over there.
Its own problems over there.
Yeah, we'll discuss that in another video.
Story for another day. Exactly.
But that being said, I think we should wrap up for the day.
We are good. We are great. So I guess, you know, the best thing that we can recommend is if you have incompetent leaders, work from the ground up to vote them out.
Yes.
Start at the primaries. It's very important. Vet your candidates. Find people who actually support you. Crazy as it may sound, find people who actually care about the will of the people. These leaders who have proven themselves to be incompetent, it's literally mathematically sound that they are incompetent at their job compared to leaders who actually kind of considered, well, how's this going to impact my population? They need to be ousted. But however, this is a big warning that if we are indeed entering into a repeat, if we're entering into rerun territory with this whole COOF thing, you know what to expect now.
I don't think we're so much heading into repeat area as it'll start to drive the mentality that local government needs to be making decisions.
I hope so.
I'm hoping that that's what it turns into. Just like I'm hoping that the farmers markets and the local economies start to become more prevalent.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I really hope that this is not a dire sign of things to come and that we will get out of it. But like I said,
I think if anything, they're making America great again by pushing people towards the idea that their policies are not working.
Yes. I think if there's anything, the shift that we have seen, because it's only been a year.
Yep.
I mean, the shift that we have seen in all of their numbers, everything like that, shows that people finally have realized, even though Democrats have spent the last 20 years telling us, if we only had control, all these great things we could do. And they've tugged people along for so long with that dream. And then finally we get to the point where, for whatever reason, call it fate, call it Donald Trump, for whatever reason, they were given the crown. And it took them a year to destroy this entire country. So, yes, I am optimistic, but the night is always darkest before the dawn. And unfortunately, midnight is coming.
But I mean, if you're looking for something more lighthearted, make sure that you are watching part 1 where we discuss Sonic 2 and some of the other more lighthearted gaffes politically and otherwise that come up in our everyday news. Yep. Make sure you are hitting that button, subscribing, liking, leave us a comment if you want to see anything, and I will try to link all of our articles below.
Yeah. Fair enough. Well, that was a fun part 2, kind of. And you take care of you. That's the most important thing. And I suppose we will see everybody tomorrow.
Yes.